Next award is a bowling ball bag donated by Bill Harrison of the Brunswick Corporation, and that's won by Robert E. Lee of Grand Co. Steel Products. And our last award is a tub of strawberry preserves, donated by James Hanson of James Hanson Associates, and that's won by, well, he's with Gardner Advertising Company, Fred C-Z-U-F-I-N, I guess it is. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Will. Appreciate the dispatch in which you did the honors today. Now we have an event I think I'm sure many in this room have wanted us to do for quite some time, and we're honored to do it. To present this most deserved award, we have the first Vice President of the Advertising Club of St. Louis, Mr. Jerry Connors. Mr. Connors?
Thank you, Bob. A year ago, we had the honor to present the first Silver Medal Award to an old friend, Mr. Leonard Hornbein, at the end of the table. And today we have a similar pleasure. The Silver Medal Award is different from all other advertising awards. It is never given for a singular, spectacular achievement. It is given for a long span of achievement, a lifetime of service in the highest traditions of the advertising business. The winner must have a solid and continuous record of achievement for his company. He should be an original, imaginative thinker and have made contributions outside his own organization to the overall good of the advertising profession. He must be known as a man of integrity, one who will lend a helping hand to young people just beginning in advertising, and he must be active in civic or religious affairs dedicated to some phase of the human welfare. As chairman of the awards committee, it gives me great pleasure to announce that the 1963 Silver Medal Award to a fellow ad clubber who certainly meets every one of these criteria, Mr. Ray Krings. Ray? I have about 3.5 pages of Ray's achievements with Anheuser-Busch. I think that we all know him as ad clubbers. He's a tremendous guy, and it gives me a tremendous amount of pleasure to award the Silver Medal Award on behalf of the Advertising Federation of America, the Ad Club of St. Louis, and Printers Inc. Ray Krings.
Thank you, Jerry. Jerry, you are overgenerous, and I do appreciate all those nice things you said to me, but I would like to call the attention of these young men from Southern Illinois that there was a sentence he didn't read, and there was an aftermath to the sentence, and the sentence he didn't read read this way, because I know the guy who wrote it, so I know it was there. Said Ray Krings has spent 30 years of his life at Anheuser-Busch, and the final instructions I had was that having won it after 30 years, I had a time for a 45-second message. Believe me, I first want to express in the name really of my boss, because actually he makes it possible, Mr. Busch, and these wonderful guys from Anheuser-Busch who are here today in great number, for my fellow cohorts at Darcy with whom I work very closely, I should like to express the keenest appreciation to the Ad Club, to the Advertising Federation, and to Printers Inc. You know, this is obviously for me a heartwarming thing. As a matter of fact, I feel humbled and dwarfed in this flood of human goodwill. And while it's true I have 45 seconds, it seems to me there ought to be something that I could say to you today that might have some meaning. Actually, I pondered. I wondered just how to do this. And somehow or other there came into my mind the figure of a little guy and a crutch And of course, now you know that I'm talking about the little guy, Tiny Tim, whose shadow falls big despite his tininess across the pages of literature. And so today, in, so to speak, thinking of his faith and his courage and his optimism, I would like to say to you at the same time, I hope you will join me in saying, God bless us, everyone. Thank you very much.
You know, when the Cardinal appeared before the Advertising Club a month or so ago, we had two gentlemen on the program that tried to help him along in his work. Well, one of those gentlemen was down in Florida with the Cardinals, broadcasting the games, but the other gentleman wanted to prove that he could do well without his partner. At the same time, he wanted to help out in the stadium project. Delighted to introduce to you today Bob Holt, Mr. Bob Holt.
I'm not nearly so sure of myself as Bob would lead you to believe without Jack. I just realized how much I actually miss him because when we are to appear here together, Jack never eats anything. He does the worrying for both of us. I clean my plate. I somehow always feel it whenever I get up here with Jack. If I get lost or I fumble around or I can't see the few notes we scribble down together, Jack's the kind of a guy that can carry the ball. So Jack never touches any of his food on these occasions, which will give you some idea of the confidence he has in me. Let us just, if we may, let us just suppose for a few minutes that this great stadium project would bog down. Heaven forbid. But let us suppose that it won't be finished on schedule, just for the sake of supposing. Who would be the logical man that they would make chairman of the board if they really got into deep trouble? Who's the man that we call on, especially in athletics, to help out in so many ways? It would be our great Hall of Famer, Stan Musial. So let's suppose that we're at a board meeting. Stan has some of his very close and very special associates with him, and Stan might turn around and talk something like this. It's very nice of all of you. I think it's really wonderful for all of you to come over here and help me out. I think, especially you, Mr. Churchill, I know you haven't been feeling too well. It's very nice. Very nice of you to help me out. Good people of the board of directors, I told Stan that I would help him out on only one condition, and that's if he agrees to open a restaurant with me in London. We can call it Stan and Winnie's. And I would even grant Mr. Hyland permission to have Jack Buck come in every evening and broadcast the changing of the chefs. That's very good, Mr. Churchill. I think it's really wonderful that, that you could be here. I know you'd want to help out if you could, Mr. Laurie.
Yes, I think this is a great project, but they're going about it in the wrong way. I think we ought to have some of my associates get all of the prominent people down by the riverfront where we can explain the site to them. And then we wait till about midnight, and we take the money we need. What do you think of that, Sidney?
I think it's an excellent idea, Peter. Peter, but I don't think we could do it alone. No, not at all. I think it'd be great if we could call in Boris Karloff to help us out. It's right up my alley. I think it would be excellent. But what stadium could be completed without the threat of Dracula hanging over their heads? So we've invited Dracula to join us after he has his cocktail.
Wow, that sure doesn't taste like tomato juice.
I don't think you could scare anybody, Dracula, but I think it's wonderful that you decided to help us out. Jimmy Durante, I know you'd like to say something.
That's true, Stan. You know, I think it's a wonderful thing, this stadium, and I'll help out with every ounce of my energy from the good old days. But I want to tell you one thing. You gotta promise that on opening day, when one of our great sports teams is standing out there at the stadium waiting to play ball, you gotta let me sing the national anthem. I can do it up proud. Oh, beautiful, for spacious skies.
That's not the national anthem.
My country, 'tis of thee.
That's not the national anthem.
God bless America.
That's not the national anthem.
Oh, say, can you see? That's the national anthem. I got a million of them.
Well, I don't think really that we're getting this meeting off the ground at all. I think it is wonderful that he's dropped by, and I think we better call upon the president to help us out.
Well, I feel that we should pursue the stadium project with vigor. I believe that one of the best ways that I could help would be to solve the parking problem. And I feel that we should hire the special Redbird Express buses to be driven by the CIA men. Of course, we all know that's the CIA, but everyone expects me to say And feel that it would be in the public interest if the CIA men would drive these Redbird Express buses out to St. Charles and let all the spectators walk down the stadium. However, I've talked it over very carefully with Bobby and Teddy, Jockey, and I think the best way to solve the entire problem is not with bonds, not with contributions, but just let Dad build the stadium for us. Thank you very much.
Thanks very much, Bob Holt. We have, for the final business today, we have a membership reading. Mr. George Bilyeu has one first reading and one member to be voted on. Mr. Bilyeu?
Thank you, Robert. I'm glad I don't have to be funny today. We had one first reading. Somebody else said that a while ago. They said, Bilyeu, you don't have to be funny today. This will be your 14th week. You didn't have to be funny. We have one first reading in the name of Edward N. Leckman of the Clean Stick Products Company, recommended by Irv Meinberg and Bob Hyland. Well, we have one to be voted on. Monsignor Daniel Moore, editor of the St. Louis Review. Monsignor, would you please stand? He is recommended by Bob Hyland and Dave Calhoun. Now, Monsignor, you may have a chance here, but if you don't, we'll count the absentee votes.
Members of the Advertising Club, Monsignor, don't go away. This is important. You can see we have a very outstanding man with us today, and I ask your mercy. I ask mercy today. You've heard the recommendation of Mr. Bilyeu. No motion? He so moved. You've heard the recommendation of Mr. Bilyeu. Do we have a second anywhere in the place? You second. All right. All in favor of admitting Monsignor Moore into the Advertising Club of St. Louis, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Gentlemen, I ask you for mercy today. Well, I'm sorry, Monsignor. All opposed? No! Monsignor Moore, welcome to the Advertising Club of St. Louis. I'd like to present this very distinguished head table to you at this time. First, we have to my left the former winner, last year's winner of the AFA Silver Award, Mr. Leonard Hornbein. Mr. Hornbein. You've met Mr. Krings and Mr. Connors. The next man we have is Mr. Arthur Swartz, partner of Swartz and Van Hofen, consulting architects on the stadium project. Mr. Swartz. Now we have a partner in the firm of Murphy and Mackey, Mr. Eugene Mackey. Mr. Mackey. The executive director of the Land Clearance and Housing Authority, Mr. C.L. Ferris. Mr. Ferris. The executive vice president, Civic Center Redevelopment Corporation, Mr. O.O. McCracken. President of the Chamber of Commerce of Metropolitan St. Louis and Secretary of the Civic Center Redevelopment Corporation, Honorable Lois P. Coffin. Vice President and Chairman of the Executive Committee, Civic Center Redevelopment Corporation, Preston Easton. To my right, you've met Mr. Bilyeu, Monsignor Moore. We have the President of the St. Louis Labor Council and Vice President of the Civic Center Redevelopment Corporation, Mr. Joe Clark. Mr. Clark. The President, First National Bank in St. Louis and President of Civic Center Redevelopment Corporation, and that's wrong, he's Chairman of the Board, Mr. Jim Hickok. Mr. Hickok. The President of Swervett and Parcell Incorporated, architects for the stadium project, General Swervett. General. I suppose I could introduce this next gentleman as President of the St. Louis Cardinals, President of Anheuser-Busch, and probably for the tremendous civic contributions to this community he has made, I think will go down in all-time history of this city. But I'd prefer to introduce him to you today as Chairman of the Bicentennial Celebration Committee, Mr. August A. Busch, Jr. Mr. Busch. And next to me, the great mayor of our city, Mayor Raymond R. Tucker. Mr. Tucker. We're indeed fortunate to have for today's VIP program chairman one of the nation's outstanding retailers, Mr. Stanley J. Goodman. He's president and general manager of Famous-Barr. Mr. Goodman was born in Montreal, Canada, and graduated from McGill University there. And he then received a master's degree from Harvard University Business School in Business Administration. He came to Famous-Barr in 1948, and in 1954 he was appointed assistant general manager of all Famous-Barr stores, and 2 years later became general manager, and in 1959 he was elected president of the Famous-Barr Company. Despite his business accomplishments, Stanley Goodman has time for many cultural and civic activities. He's a gifted amateur musician and patron of the arts, and he serves as chairman of the board of the Little Symphony Association on the board of directors of the St. Louis Symphony Society. Other activities included Associated Retailers, of which he is a director, Family and Children's Service, the World Affairs Council of Greater St. Louis, the City Planning Committee of Downtown St. Louis Incorporated, the Better Business Bureau, the Missouri Historical Society, Chamber of Commerce, just to name a few. We're indeed delighted and honored to introduce our VIP program chairman for today, Mr. Stanley Goodman.
What he didn't say is that I'm a shoplifter. I come to you today as I have stolen Mr. Ed Stone from Jim Hickok and Preston Eastep, and I express my appreciation to them. When Bob Hyland put the finger on me, I thought that nothing would be more appropriate and exciting than to introduce our new stadium project, unveil it to this highly intelligent and creative and playful group here today. And so I put in a bid for Mr. Stone and got away with it. This is a great day for all of us in St. Louis. It's a day that we've been waiting for a long time. I am a St. Louisan of only 15 years standing, but I've come to love this city and to feel a real admiration for the constructive spirit in this town. I've never lived anywhere, and I've lived in other cities where when there's something to be done that's good and constructive, you can always get ready support for it. We are engaged on a historic task, and this is a sort of historic day, I feel, in it. The task of rebuilding our city, just as many American cities are trying to put their cities together again after they were taken apart by the automobile. It's not an easy thing to do. I personally believe that St. Louis has a better chance than almost any other city in America to do it. The leadership that we have represented here, many of them in this room and at this head table, have the vision and the energy to do it. The only thing that I would like to say is that we must be careful not to let impatience destroy our enthusiasm and our initiative, because these things take time. Great cities were built over periods of hundreds of years. Great buildings sometimes, like the cathedrals of Europe, took 400 years to build. So that if the arch takes 20 or 30 years, and the stadium takes 6 years, and maybe the whole city plan takes 50 years, that need not be a cause for discouragement. But we have a great plan, we have great projects underway, and I feel that this day, when you will see the unveiling of the first big step in the revitalization of downtown, will be a memorable one. The man I'm introducing to you has the great good fortune to have started out from the Ozarks. And with that advantage, he has become a worldwide creator of buildings. I have a lot of respect and admiration for the courage that it must take to be an architect, because when an architect makes a statement, he makes it in unequivocal terms, and it's pretty permanent. There it is. He can't say he didn't mean it. He can't say he was misunderstood. It's there, and it's in concrete or stone or steel, and therefore it takes courage to do these things. Edward Stone was born in Fayetteville, Arkansas, in our neighboring state, and sallied forth from there to develop a style of architecture which has had worldwide influence on our generation. Some of his early work was in New York, where he participated in the design of Rockefeller Center and the Rockefeller Center theaters. From there he went on to do the Museum of Modern Art, and little by little evolved a style that has been called a style that is optimistic. It is not it is a sort of protest to the more restricted and sterile and severe kind of architecture that has become widely prevalent in our time. His buildings have a certain charm and color and excitement. He has done buildings for governments, for cities, schools and colleges, museums, hospitals, churches, theaters, many homes, hotels, factories. In fact, everything except department stores. I don't know how, I guess we're hopeless. He has taught at Yale, at NYU, at Princeton, at Cornell, at MIT, and Columbia. He has received some 20 awards, medals, and degrees, many of them from nations far away. His book The Evolution of an Architect is a very engaging and inspiring book which tells very briefly and modestly his own life story, but mostly lets you see it in the pictures of his work. It happens to be at sale at some of the department stores in town. His buildings will live for a long time to come. Frank Lloyd Wright, who was not a man given to much praise of others, said that the American Embassy at New Delhi in India was one of the most beautiful buildings of the last 100 years. His El Panama Hotel in Panama influenced the design of hotels all over the world. The American Pavilion at the Brussels World Fair impressed visitors from all over the world with the spirit of America as well as with the spirit of that building. Right now, he is in the midst of planning the Cultural Center, the National Cultural Center at Washington, as well as many other buildings. But we in St. Louis, who have had a glimpse of this model, sort of feel that this thing that he's going to show you will be one of his great works, one of his masterpieces. The only thing about him is don't try to reach him by telephone, because he's apt to be in Pakistan or in Beirut, in Lebanon, or in almost any foreign country you want to mention, including California. So I am very honored today to present to you a great rolling stone who may roll further in his chosen field than any living American, Mr. Edward Durrell Stone.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, distinguished guests, Mayor Tucker. I appreciated that introduction, Mr. Goodman. Have only one regret that Mrs. Stone isn't here. She has no idea how really worthwhile I am. And I am glad you referred to my indigenous origin. As a matter of fact, Fayetteville, Arkansas is the seat of the state university, and it's known there locally among the farm people as the Athens of the Ozarks, not to be confused with the Athens of Pericles. As a matter of fact, I have St. Louis to thank for my becoming an architect. My brother, as a young man, came to St. Louis to see the World's Fair here, and he was so impressed that he decided to be an architect, and that, of course, influenced me. So you're really all to blame for the skeletons in the closet. St. Louis is a very dear spot to me. My mother was born here, and I've always thought of it as a place with enormous civic pride. As a matter of fact, the last time I saw my father, he was in his 90s, living in Sullivan, Missouri, and he brought me to St. Louis. And we walked over this very same ground. It was then being cleared, and he told me about the great things that were to happen here. So I've come all the way around to make it here. I was, as some of my friends here, Charlie Noggle or Gene Mackey will tell you, I've not always been a teetotaler. In fact, 30 years ago, I was known to look upon wine when it was red, as they say. And I was telling Mr. Busch that one of the highlights of the 30s in New York was when Anheuser-Busch sent this great wagon there with about 6 or 8 beautiful Percheron horses, and they drove down Fifth Avenue. And Al Smith was then living in Empire State Building, and he came down with his brown derby, and the driver got off the wagon and presented him with a case of beer. It was one of the highlights of the 30s in New York, Mr. Busch. Very grateful to you for it. We have, of course, in our profession, a great hero, Frank Lloyd Wright. Now, Frank Lloyd Wright was he was a transcendentalist. He didn't like the cities, and he took every opportunity to insult them. He never insulted St. Louis, but when he was called upon by the city fathers of Pittsburgh to come there and advise them on what should be done with their city, he said, "Gentlemen, there's only one solution: abandon it." Of Los Angeles, he said, "If you turn the world up on its side, everything loose would end up in Los Angeles." This is certainly an occasion for me, although I'm a small part of the team. General Swedrup and Schwartz and Van Hofen and many, many others of us have worked on this project. I would like to be modest and appropriate display of humility. However, you'll observe that these homely virtues are in disrepute these days. Again, Mr. Wright said that early in life he had to decide between honest arrogance and hypocritical humility. And he chose honest arrogance and never had any occasion to regret it. On another occasion, Sir Winston Churchill was speaking in the House of Commons, and he scornfully attacked his fellow statesman, Mr. Attlee. And some of the members of the House rallied to Mr. Attlee's defense. And among other things, they said Mr. Attlee was a very modest man. And whereupon Sir Winston jumped to his feet and he said, "I couldn't agree with you more. Mr. Attlee is a modest man, and he certainly has a lot to be modest about." So I'm a little bit torn between hypocritical humility and honest arrogance. But honest arrogance I have to let win out and acknowledge that I am very proud of this building, the part I've had in it, and in my humble opinion, it will be the most beautiful stadium in the country. I'm going to subject you to some home movies if I hope they're not as ill-fated as they usually are. So if we could have the lights off, I'll show you some of the pictures of our drawings of the stadium. I love this pointer. It makes me feel sure I'm in the 20th century. But there's the Mississippi River, the great Jefferson Arch, and the projected mall, which I'm sure will become a reality. Here is the Busch Memorial Stadium with the garages to either side here, and the projected waterfront amusement facility here between the stadium and the mall. I think this waterfront project is a fascinating one, and I understand it will attempt to restore the color and the life of this great city over the last 100 years. This is a view of the model. As you know, it seats 50,000 people. It is arranged so it can be converted for both baseball and football by revolving these lower banks of seats so they parallel the football field when it's in use there. And General Sverdrup, the inventor of this, the mechanics of this, says that this transformation could be made in an hour's time, whereas in other places it takes a day or so. The building, as you see, is considering the complication of the problem, I fancy that it's rather simple in appearance. A great colonnade around the entire periphery with the ramps that lead you. There are 8 sets of ramps that lead you to the seats above. One of the blessings that we have here is that the playing field is some 27 feet below the streets, which means that you don't have a formidable wall around the building. And the new Met Stadium, which is in New York, which is built entirely above ground, looms up, so you, with all due respect to my adopted city, it looks like you're climbing a mountain to get to the top seat. This building will be built of reinforced concrete. Makes possible many very refined details, the canopy which shades the upper tiers of seats, delicate. Generally, I hope the building is not a massive, oppressive thing, but a gay and cheerful and simple building. One of the things that, as you recall, most of the baseball stadium have only a horseshoe. You see, they're built in this shape with the end open, and while they may look very well on the approach side, they look like some major calamity when you see them from the field. Here, of course, we have the full circle completed, so it will be I hope, a handsome building from every side. This is a detail of the building. You see the columns I spoke of earlier and the ramps traversing the area beyond the columns. It's a detail from the interior. The upper tier, which seats some 27,000 people, is smaller strip with the box holders and the press, and the lower seats here with the movable ones at the bottom. Since Mr. Goodman suggested it, I've hauled out a few skeletons from my closet to show you that this is a building we did for the United States in New Delhi, in India. It's our embassy there, office building. It's an approach to that building. It's shaded from the intense tropical heat and enveloped in a grill to shade the glass areas. This is a view of the interior court of that building. This is where Mrs. Kennedy, they gave a dinner party in her honor there in that balcony, and they had musicians on these islands in the lagoon. The entire center of the building is a water garden. This is another view of the water garden from the second floor offices. You see the fountains and the tropical vegetation serve to cool this is our building in Brussels. Many of you, I'm sure, saw it. It's a circular building, as you see, but only 350 feet in diameter, a very modest enterprise compared to what you'll have here in St. Louis. Another view of that building at night. Had a great lagoon to reflect the building. We moved in some 120 apple trees from the countryside, and here you see them, group them around the lagoon. Here you see them in full flower. This is a daytime view showing the apple trees in bloom. It's a view of the interior. It had a translucent roof that was built like a bicycle wheel with spokes coming from an outer ring to an inner ring, and the trees there were planted by one of Belgium's kings. I'm sure his name was Leopold, and we couldn't disturb those, so we simply built the building over them. I thought this might be diverting. It's a factory building in Pasadena, California. It's known locally as the Pill Palace. Show you that it's a detail of the interior of that building. The people who come to visit are taken around the periphery of it and shown the manufacturing processes as they go around this enclosed garden. It's a view of that building at night. It's rather interesting to think, since the factory's been separated from the railroad and freed and now are placed in parks, and they can be made very attractive indeed. When Khrushchev visited this country, the State Department wanted to take him on a tour of this building to show him that our factory workers were not persecuted. This, as a matter of fact, is a swimming pool which the factory workers use in their off hours. Rather humane treatment. I thought it might be diverting to show you how Texans live. This is a house for, well, I guess very modest by Texas standards. But this lady came to me and wanted a house done, and well, I said, what would you like? And she said, well, I just wanted white marble and hi-fi. I'll leave the rest. Said, I'll leave the rest to you. And I said, well, you want a swimming pool? Oh, by all means. Well, I said, why don't we put that indoors? Well, she said, I think that's a wonderful idea. So here you see the swimming pool indoor with Louis XV furniture around it. It's no slum clearance project. This room caused some comment. You see, the dining table is placed on a circular marble island, which in turn is in a rectangular pool, and you get on the island from that point there. Well, at the opening dinner, they had one of the dignified bankers and local philanthropists there, black tie occasion, of course, and he inaugurated the pool inadvertently, and they fished him out. Fortunately, the English butler also was there and lent him his dinner jacket, which they thought fitted him much better than the one he'd had on. But this is a very austere fellow, and it was a great humanizing influence, because ever afterward he's known locally as the skin diver. John D. Rockefeller used a dime, but this to make him a human being, but this worked all right for this. Okay. I have to put in a commercial for New York State. This is a new university which we're doing there out of Albany. It's interesting in that it's a new campus built for 10,000 students all at one time. All universities, of course, have grown over decades, if not centuries, so it enabled us to do something rather different and practical. All the academic buildings are under one roof. an auditorium, a library, and a student union building with the classrooms around the periphery and courtyards in the interior. And the dormitories are 4 20-story towers with 3-story quadrangles. There's not an automobile on the campus. They're all around the periphery, and all deliveries are in the basements through underground tunnels through the basements of these buildings. Just another view of it. This is a building group we're doing in Pakistan. They're building a new capital there up in the foothills of the Himalayas, and this is Pakistan's debut in the atomic age. This is an atomic nuclear institute with all the laboratories around the periphery and a reactor and a tower which serves not only a practical purpose of gravity water tower, but also vents the atomic gases. Another view, we're doing a typical Mughal garden with the reflecting pools that are a little reminiscent of the Taj Mahal. Another view of that. The reactor is in a big lagoon here. Fountains. This is the National Cultural Center in Washington. This slide happens to be in backwards, but if you can, it isn't too distinct, but that's the Lincoln Memorial there, the Washington Monument, and the Cultural Center, which houses an opera and a theater and a concert hall. It's right on the banks of the river, with a great terrace overlooking the Potomac and an island in the middle here dedicated to Theodore Roosevelt, and always be a bird sanctuary. And we're now in the process of raising money for this great facility. We have $38 million to go. But at least to have enough to pay the architect, so I'm hard at work on it. Okay. It's another view of the model. This is the great terrace on the Potomac, and on the roof we have 2 restaurants and an open area in the middle where it can be used for theater in the round, outdoor concerts, band concerts, and all sorts of other things. This is a view of the building with the roof removed. This is the approach through a plaza. This is the Potomac, and you enter at this point and this point, and the center element is a theater. This is a concert hall. This is opera, concert hall, and theater, all under one roof with parking for 1,500 cars beneath this platform which you see here. I think it's marvelous the country's going to have this facility. You know, we haven't, owing to the fact we never had any royal family, we don't have any Buckingham Palace, nor Versailles, nor the Winter Palace in Leningrad. As a matter of fact, when Queen of England visited New York, we entertained her in an armory. Seems a little bit poverty-stricken for the richest country in history. Fortunately, the armory was an infantry armory, but it could have been cavalry. Okay. Well, thank you very much.
Thank you very, very much, Mr. Stone. Delighted and honored to have you with us today. I suppose that the members and guests can go approach and look at the models at firsthand. Thank you very much again. We're delighted to have you with us, and for your very fine address today and showing us the stadium. The Advertising Club of St. Louis, is proud to elect you to the Order of the Brass Hats.
Well, thank you.
And to Stanley Goodman, in appreciation as our VIP program chairman today, Mr. Goodman has been elected to the Order of the Gavel. Mr. Goodman. Thank you very much for coming. Meeting adjourned.